Hello, hello, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, wherever I'm streaming today. Beth Granger here. In case you don't know me, I'm a trainer, consultant, and speaker on the topic of growing your business and professional brand using LinkedIn. And sometimes when I go live, I introduce you to amazing people that I know so that you can know them too. Just some housekeeping. If you're joining us live, please comment. Let us know you're here. Share it out so your friends can watch it too. And if you're watching on replay, also feel free to ask questions or comments, and hopefully the different platforms will notify me that you did that. My guest today is Robert Dienes. He has over 33 years of professional real estate sales experience with hundreds of successful sales transactions throughout New York City and the world. That's interesting. The interesting thing to me is the relationship that he builds with developers, sellers, buyers through processes or complex transactions. It's not always a simple thing, as many of you know, especially if you've bought or sold a home. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Beth.
What fun to have you here today live. So it's kind of interesting because there are tons of realtors, right? You get the local paper and there's just pictures, pictures and pictures. What drew you to this? How did you get involved in all of this?
Yeah, well, thank you for that question. So, I was back in the '70s and '80s. I was a disc jockey in nightclubs, and one day in one of my clubs, some customers came in and they started to talk about how they sold buildings. And I said, "Wait a minute, you sell the whole building?" And they were like, "Yep, we sell the whole building." I was like fascinated by that. I mean, I thought to myself, geez, I could actually sell someone a piece of New York City. And I was very excited about that. And that all started in 1987. So when I first began, the stock market crashed and nobody was buying any buildings because the interest rates were 14%. No one was buying buildings. So I decided that within a firm that I was working with, I would go into sales of apartments and rentals and work on the residential side. So that's how I kind of got developed, started it, and got into it in 1987.
That's fascinating. It's funny you say that, people could own a piece of Manhattan. I actually inherited, I jokingly call it the doorknob. Um, my grandfather apparently invested in a building on 34th Street way back when. It went to my mom and then it passed to me and my brother. And what's funny was, I had like 0.0000 whatever of a share, but I was on the mailing list as if I was some big investor. And I would get these newsletters about investing in property and REITs and this, that, and the other thing. So I used to own a doorknob somewhere in Manhattan.
And on 34th Street, no less.
On 34th Street, yes. It was part of was becoming, when it passed to me, was becoming a REIT that may have included the Empire State Building, but I'm not exactly sure. Fascinating stuff.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's a funny time, right? This whole COVID and what is going on with real estate in the city. Fill
Yeah.
us in.
Yeah. So that's a great question. So, at the beginning of COVID, sort of March, late March, um, we were shut down for a while. And we couldn't show apartments, and so, that kind of stopped our business up until June. And then we were again allowed to take people out and show buyers and get back into the business. So it started to flow again, but it flowed very slowly. So what's happening at this point today in this market is we're seeing a couple things. One is people are leaving, it's still leaving Manhattan somewhat, and they are going out because they're realizing today, hey, I can take my laptop that we're all on today, and I can go to Long Island, Connecticut. I can go up to, the Berkshire Mountains. I can go anywhere really, and I can work from there. I don't necessarily have to work from New York. So we're seeing a lot of people coming out of New York and they're moving to the suburbs. That has been a trend. It's been going on for a while. What I am seeing now, it's very interesting, is that people are realizing that this may be their opportunity to invest in New York City.
Mhm.
Interest rates are extremely low at numbers we haven't seen. Um, and so, based upon that, we're seeing a lot of traffic on the listings that we currently have where we're representing sellers. We're getting a lot of traffic on all of those. And people are making offers. And a lot of times they're coming in with low offers because they think, oh, I'm going to get the COVID discount. But in a lot of cases, there isn't really a COVID discount. Now, let's take the West Village, for example. The West Village has always held its value. You're not really going to find much of a discount in the West Village. If you're looking for that discount, you want to know where the inventory is the greatest. So, for example, if you looked at a 3-bedroom condominium on the Upper East Side, you may be able to find, the inventory up there is much higher than in a lot of other segments of the city. And that may be where you can get, a discount. But, it's going to be somewhere between maybe 7 and 10%, might be a little higher in other cases.
It's not a huge amount.
No, it's not. So we're not seeing tremendous discounts with the exception of maybe the very, very high end. Like if anyone out there wants to buy a $30 million apartment, we might be able to get you a 20 or 25% discount if we negotiate it right for you.
That's good to know. So it's interesting. Oh, and we have a question. Hey, Noel. Hey, Steve. Thanks for joining us. Steve asks, do you have any ballpark thoughts on when the mass might start coming back to New York City, when people might be returning?
Yeah, and I think that might be Steve Isaacson. So hi, Steve.
Actually, Steve
and
Kent, Steve Isaac, he's
yeah,
sometimes on here.
yeah, he gave me a great compliment the other day. Anyway, yeah, so I think the answer to that question is it's a bit uncertain, but my feeling is that the vaccine now is starting to come along. We're seeing a lot more positive news on that, and I think once it's distributed, it gets into more people's arms, and people are starting to feel once they start to feel more comfortable that oh, you know what, I can go to a restaurant, I can go to a show, I can do all that, and they start opening these all the cultural spots that we all love.
Right.
It'll start to come back, and I think it's going to come back because I saw 1987 the stock market crash, 9/11, 2007, 8. Those were all rough times. This is a very rough time, but New York City always comes back, and it will.
Yeah. Well, and I'm wondering, maybe it'll come back differently. Maybe people of a certain age, or depending what they do for a living, are saying, I just want more space, or I want some, the suburbs or the country even. Whereas maybe other people, younger people, or people just starting out in their careers, or people looking for a deal, like you said. So I think there's always an influx and things moving around, right?
Yeah, and I think foreigners have missed this country for a while now, and I think they love New York, and they're going to be back, and they're going to be back in strong numbers, and they'll be buying again. And they tend to buy more in condominiums. So I think you're going to see that traffic start to pick up as people begin to feel more comfortable.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I know some people who recently got some great deals for rentals where, they were in a place that maybe didn't have an elevator, and now they have an elevator and a rooftop this and a gym, and for around the same per month. So
Yes. Well, the rental inventory has been very high. In fact, I have a friend of mine, Edward, that I've been helping to help him get a rental, and it's a process, and it can be somewhat of a difficult process because it's personal as to what you want to live in, and so you've got to go through that process. But it is a good time to look for rentals because the inventory is high, although we are seeing a lot of activity in the rental sector as well.
good to know. Good to know. And if you're just joining us, feel free to put some comments in the chat, questions in the chat, share this out so people can join us. And if you're watching on replay, the same thing. So tell me, it's something when I first met you that I thought was really interesting. So when I think of somebody who's involved in residential real estate, I think, buying and selling a house, buying and selling a condo or whatever. I know that you're involved in some interesting guidance for developers. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So, a development project is very, very different than a regular resale. There's a lot of pre-planning that goes into a development project. So, what are the room sizes? How many bedrooms should there be? What type of finishes should we recommend? You don't want to build a building with lots of studios where there are families that could buy into the area, right? So all of that pre-planning is very, very critical because every minute that a developer's money and the investor's money is into the project is critical. So the pre-planning is extremely important. And then beyond that, the marketing and the sales piece of it is extremely important as well. And so, it's a little bit different than just selling an apartment, selling a townhouse, selling a co-op. So,
and I imagine right now, and you can tell me if this is the case, I imagine people are looking for either more space or more separate rooms. In other words, so that they're not in the kitchen with their kids on Zoom for school, that they can have a separate office or gym or whatever it might be.
Absolutely. Great point, Beth. It's huge. People need that space today because a lot of people, as we know, are working from home and they need to close that door and have that quiet in their house. And, listen, we've all seen the cats and the dogs come up on the screen. It's very funny. But, if you're in a serious meeting like this one, you want to, make sure that you have that private room. So those are all very important factors and things that are very appealing. And another thing that's very appealing on your, just to touch a little further on what you're asking, outdoor space today is really, really very important to people as well. People want to, with outdoor space. So that's become even more popular than I think it's ever been.
Yeah, and I have to say, this is the first year where it happens a little more every year where I say, oh, do I want to be here for the winter? If I was in a climate that had nicer weather all year long, all summer I was working outside at my, table outside. And we need that outdoor space, whatever it might be in the city, right? There are rooftops and things like that. So
sure. Yeah. And we've seen a lot of people, go up to we're helping people, with development projects that are up in the Catskills now, and people are realizing that, hey, I can get a yard. My kids can run around. I can have lots of room up there. And so, there is a lot of that. But as I said before, we are seeing traffic now return to the city. So it's interesting.
Yeah. And back to something we were talking about earlier, a LinkedIn user, I can't tell who it is because of the settings, but says that they hear of a lot of empty apartments with no fee applications and even 3 months free rent. So I wonder if that's still happening or not.
Yeah, so there's a lot of incentive programs going on. We'll offer 2 months, we'll offer reduced rent. When the inventory is high, this is what happens. And so there is still a lot of that I'm seeing, but that is slowly starting to shift. So maybe instead of 3 months, now you're seeing 2 or maybe 1 or, so there is a change that's going on because I think people are realizing now that New York is going to come back and, they're feeling a little more comfortable and, they're realizing, hey, now is my time to take advantage. And that's why you're seeing the inventory start to dry up a little bit.
Right. And we have a good question from Noel. Noel says, do you think the SALT cap is going to be repealed soon? And for those of us not in your industry, can you tell us what that is before you answer the question?
Yeah. So, well, that's good question, Neil. So, SALT it's something that people can take advantage of in terms of taxes, right? And so, in my expertise, a lot of times we're not allowed to discuss fully and get into tax all that much, but you can apply for it if you're an owner of a property or an apartment or you're owner of a townhouse. You can apply for a SALT reduction and take that off your taxes. But I just suggest that, when you're dealing with that and you want to apply for it, that you go to the expert, which is, either your CPA or a tax person that you may know that is skilled in assault reductions. But in answer to his question, I'm not sure if that's going to be repealed yet or not.
Yeah, Google that after we get off. Good question, Noel. Thank you. And Noel and Robert, do you know Noel yet?
I don't know.
Okay. So for those of you watching who may not know, I'm involved in a business development networking organization called ABA, American Business Associates, and Robert is in the Beacon Council, and Noel is in I forget what council. It'll come to Normandy, I think, Normandy Council. So he's in another. You may have met at a cross council event, or maybe you will, but now you have through this.
Okay, I know.
And another question. All right. Alan asks, do you have a feel when inventory will come down to more normal levels that would then strengthen prices?
Well, let's see. Let me look into my crystal ball, Alan, and figure this one. That's it's hard. It's very hard to predict timing. So, I'm going to say that the more I think people feel more comfortable now that we have news on the vaccine. But it's very iffy as to whether you're going to get it. People are confused. Some people I've heard they've gotten the vaccine, so great. Other people have not. And so I think it's a comfort level that needs to be established before you'll see inventory really start to, become reduced. But it's starting to happen now. So, we were at a point where there are about 10,000 units or maybe a little more available for sale in Manhattan. And now, we're seeing 6,000, 7,000 in that area. So it's taking place at this point. When will it come down to maybe a 5,000, which is about a normal market? I would say maybe by summer, I would hope, but it's a very difficult thing to really predict. But
yeah,
let's
get
hope.
out the magic 8-ball.
That's right. Let's hope.
Oh, that's crazy. So you're seeing, I guess you're seeing people leaving the city for the suburbs and beyond, but yet you're also seeing people. Are the people that you're seeing look for stuff in the city, is that for investment, or do they plan to live there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think there's a little bit of both. We're seeing people take advantage of low interest rates, and because the interest rates are low, the numbers in some cases will make sense for an investment property. But we're also seeing people coming in, who, wow, I'd love to live in the city. This is my opportunity. And we're seeing, really great traffic and contracts being signed for, properties that are studios, that are one bedrooms, that are the smaller units, somewhere between, let's say 500 to 600 and up to 2 million. That segment is very busy right now. So, so you're seeing both.
Excellent. And we have another question from Ellen Volpe. And speaking of ABA, founder of ABA, she asks, what do you expect when moratoriums are lifted? Will inventories increase?
And I think Ellen's referring to the moratorium on evictions, if I'm correct. Yeah. Okay. And so, which is still in place. You can't evict tenants now. And so, I don't know when that is going to lift, because it's still a very rough economy, right? And, you can't disrupt people from their apartments, when they're not making money. It's a tough issue. So, I would again say that probably the answer to that is just going to be when the economy begins to improve. I think then you may see the moratoriums begin to be lifted. And when does that happen? I think, again, when people feel comfortable without a vaccine and, things start to open up again in New York City, people are going to go, there's going to be some normalcy again. And normalcy, I think, means lifting moratoriums.
Right. Yeah. It's so hard to predict, right? We just don't know. Yeah. Nobody could have predicted this past year, right? That we all went through. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
And again, if you're joining us, if you have any questions, Robert is a wealth of knowledge for you. So If you're thinking of selling, thinking of buying, or just curious, ask his questions. So, you deal with people in all different ways. What do you think has made you successful?
Well, one of the things I think is very, very important in my business, maybe a little less from the technical standpoint, but more of how do you build a business? My business is about numbers and relationships. So on the relationship side, it's very important in my business and really any type of business where you're helping people is to build relationships. That's very important. And I find extreme enjoyment in connecting people to people like our group and introducing people that I think can help create opportunities for each other. So that's something I not only feel is very, very important, especially in an environment like this, but it's a good thing to do, and it brings it brings people together and makes positive connections for people. I really enjoy doing that. The other side is relationships. Exactly, building those relationships is so critical. That's one thing, and the other thing is it's important to understand that in real estate, transactions become complex. At the beginning, people say, "Oh, this is easy. It's an easy transaction." They are never easy. 99% of them are not easy. So, my job is to take the complexity out of it for the seller or the buyer or the developer and try to make it as, easy a process for them as it possibly can be.
Absolutely. I do see another question. Alan asks, do you feel that we'll see more mixed use properties than present? I know I have a theory on this, but it's not my area of expertise. So curious what you have to say.
So, Alan's asking a lot of questions.
Thank you, Alan. We like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, Alan, it's good you're chiming in with us here. So when Alan says mixed use properties, that says to me, is that commercial properties, mixed use properties, or
I'm
um,
guessing he means buildings that are both residential and commercial, like where
oh,
there's commercial space. And Alan, you can clarify, but I know, for instance, here on Long Island, there's a lot of talk about that,
yeah,
about somebody wanting to build, say, in my town on the water, and in order to allow that to happen, is it commercial space? Is it that kind of thing? So,
yeah,
or even they're talking about malls, some malls that have been closed or shopping centers turning into part residential or residential.
yeah. So commercial today is really up in the air, no pun intended, with the high tower office buildings. But you know, that is a big question mark. And I think what's going to happen there, and I hope I'm answering, Alan's question correctly. If not, you could chime in again. But I think what might happen with that is, they will come back, but I think the floor plates where people took up maybe 10,000 square feet, those may be divided up. So you're going to see more of maybe 2,500 square feet for maybe 4 tenants as opposed to this big floor plate of 10,000 square feet. I think you're going to see a lot more of that. I've heard people talking about, oh, maybe some of these office buildings will be converted to residential. I
Yes.
don't really see that happening en masse, just because there's been a lot of building over the last several years of condominium buildings in Manhattan, and those aren't selling out as quickly. So I just don't, and it's hard to convert an office building into a residential building. So I just don't see that happening. I see more, smaller spaces for companies that need less space.
Got it. And Noel asks if you're licensed in other states.
Oh, that's a great question, though. So I am only licensed in New York. What I do is, because I have this wide reach, and as we were speaking earlier, it's a global reach. So I form these relationships over many years. So I can refer people, I get people who come to me and say, "Hey, Robert, I have a condo in Spain. Can you help me? How can you help me with that?" Well, I have the relationships, or my firm has the relationships with people that can help you in Spain, that can help you in China, that can help you in Europe, or can help you in Long Island. Doesn't really matter. I referred recently to Connecticut. It really doesn't matter today where it is. We can help anybody anywhere. So it's become very much a global business, and I really enjoy doing that because I get to meet people from different parts of the country and the world.
That's wonderful. And this question, as you get to know Ellen, you will know why she is curious. Ellen asks, who is in the picture
Hey,
behind you?
So over that shoulder is my wife's grandmother. Over this shoulder, there was an article that was in the one of the newspapers. It's the Queen's paper. Back in 1998, I started a mediation service for landlords and tenants.
Ah,
They would fight. They'd have to spend costs on attorneys. So before that took place, I started this mediation service where we'd help landlords and tenants try to work things out. So
like
that's an article.
like divorce mediators, but for property.
Correct. So that's an article there, and they took about 5 pictures of me, and I told them I love this one, and then they turned around and used the worst one. So, who knows what you're going to get.
Ah, so wonderful. And for people who might be interested in learning more or speaking with you, how do they get in touch with you? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I
And I
mean,
can put it in the text of that goes along with this live afterwards. I can edit it and put in contact information. Of course, they can contact you on LinkedIn. Is there any other way or any information that you'd like to share?
sure. They can call me, email me, and if you're listening and you'd like to, because I do a lot of Zoom chats with people, professionals from all over the world, and I'd love to introduce the group that's listening today. If anyone out there wants to join in on a Zoom chat, contact me. We'll set it up, and we'll find out who you'd really like to meet, who's important to you, and we'll make it happen.
I love it. I do have one more question for you, but I know we'll end a minute or two early because I know you have a 4:30 Zoom meeting. So unless we somehow bring them on Zoom and bring them on here, that would be very complicated. So my last question is, what right now how can we help you? How can the people, you've shared so much wonderful information. Who are you looking to meet, and who can the people who have joined us today, can they introduce you to?
Yeah, thank you for asking. That's a great question, Beth. I really enjoy. I can say this. I really enjoy meeting really anybody. I mean, it's there. There are a few specifics for me, but I enjoy meeting people because there's always a story, and if you listen carefully to that story, you can always take them to the next level and help them and introduce them. So I like to really meet anybody. I mean, look, everybody wants, people like to meet attorneys and like to meet CPAs, and I love that too, right? But I'm happy to meet really, just anybody. There was a woman I was talking to yesterday who is in a group that I used to be in, and she does she helps people buy natural products, whether it's cleaning products, whatever. And I could see she needed help with a little bit of coaching. So I said to her, you know what? If you ever need coaching sometime, I'm here for you. I would never charge you, but I'd love to help you. And so, that's the kind of thing I'm looking for. Relationships, as Ellen said earlier, that's really, very important. So,
Well, this has been so much fun. First of all, thank you to everybody who's joined us live. It makes it so much more of an interesting conversation. And Robert, thank you so much for taking this time to share your expertise and have this conversation that we might have had on Zoom without anybody joining us, and allowing the network to join us too. So have a
thank you
great
for that.
rest of the day, everyone. Stay well, and I will see you on the next live event. Bye-bye.
Bye.